Hello, my name is Sethina Watson, and I'm the author of this book, On Hospitals, Welfare Law and Christianity in Western Europe, 400 to 1320. On its cover is an image of Christ on the Day of Judgment, separating the sheep from the goats. Indeed, it is the moment of judgment when humanity would be divided into two groups: those who had fed the hungry, clothed the naked, sheltered the stranger, and tended the sick, and those who hadn't. The practice of caritas, charity, is what would separate the saved from the damned. These acts of mercy, seeing and caring for the most needy human beings, were what medieval hospitals were for. They were not medical institutions, as you might think. Rather, hospital was an umbrella term for a capacious array of welfare institutions and charities from the 4th century on. They served pilgrims or lepers, the poor, homeless and hungry, young scholars, disabled priests, the sick and the elderly. Their most consistent characteristic was their variety, and that remains the challenge for historians. What defined and so united these places in law and in the eyes of the church? Unlike for monasteries, there was no definition in law of what they should be. Some were, or were run by religious orders, but many, perhaps most, were not. Many existed beyond the control of the bishop, and lawmakers didn't seek to remedy this. Why not? My book gives shape to this conundrum and the messy and imaginative conversations that it produced. The title, On Hospitals, is an English version of De Hospitalibus or De Xenodocies, the kind of title given to a subject in a legal text, and in a sense, the book is working to reveal and supply that missing discussion. The book began as a paragraph in another project on English hospitals, in my simple observation that canon law did not define them. The trouble was that this conclusion flew in the face of a century of scholarship. German, French, and Italian legal historians had long argued the opposite, that the early church adopted Justinian's laws, claiming hospitals for the bishop and under canon law. But the emperor had no clothes. Even in the High Middle Ages, the era of Gratian and Innocent III, there was no clear canon law for hospitals. Only bitty statements, contradictory and inconsequential. My simple statement became an argument that what defined hospitals in law was their absence. And that's when things took flight. For as I studied the activities of lawmakers, absence emerged not simply as a fact, but a quality. It had a shape. It was a space around which lawmakers danced. Their odd statements were not the product of ignorance, but knowledge, and the result of a creative tussle between their desire to act and an inability to do so. A book took form, and absence was the key that opened up new material and sources long since dismissed or misunderstood. And that key pulled me on and into earlier centuries. Only by putting later canonists into conversation with early lawmakers and church law with Roman law did the character of absence and the form of the hospital emerge. The book became a study in the limits of the law. So the book does several things. It argues for a legal divergence between East and West. In 6th century Byzantium, Justinian's reforms codified welfare institutions, as is well known. But in Italy, hospitals found a different legal home, in testamentary law. In this, all Christians had the right to distribute property for the good of their souls. Second, building on this, the book uncovers a new legal form for the hospital in the West. This rested on the right of a willmaker to provide an endowment and determine its use. In many ways, over time, a bishop was helpful or even necessary to that design, yet anyone could make a hospital, and without the bishop. Third, the book moves across the centuries to interpret contradictory statements in law. As lawmakers wrestled with a form, that was fundamentally Christian, yet beyond the claims of the Church. To do so, I explored different legal cultures, papal councils, Carolingian capitularies, Roman law in its various forms, decretists, decretals, and decretalists. In charting the periphery of law, the book also sheds light on major figures, finding unexpected activists, failed initiatives, and wider visionary programs. I have worked to communicate a sense of wonder and discovery for readers who will have not encountered these legal cultures before. Across a millennium, what emerges is a practice that belonged not to the institutional church, but to all Christians. Caritas was a personal act of seeing and responding to the suffering of those in need. As the key to salvation, it was, like prayer, bigger than law. Ultimately, this book makes the case for hospitals and Caritas at the heart of medieval Christianity.